All right, everybody, we are back and we are now going to start new material in the carbohydrate chapter. And this one's a biggie. What do you do during exercise regarding carbohydrate? Because we know carbohydrate's important. And I tend to focus more on the endurance sports during this part, even though all different type of sports is important. During exercise, it's much easier in a strength and power type sport to get in some carbohydrate because you've got timeouts, you've got half times, those types of things that breaks in the action where you can get a drink of water, you can get some sports drink, you can do that type of thing a lot easier than you can during, say, an endurance type event like a marathon or triathlon, something like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the general ideas and guidelines and when you should really focus on consuming carbohydrate and when they're really going to make their biggest effect, cause their biggest effect. And so anything that's going to last over 90 minutes, you need to think about using sports drink. You need to be adding some carbohydrate in there. And so that means, even like your football games, that they're going to last well over that. Even though they're anaerobic sports, you're probably going to be using some glycogen during that time as well, not just the ATP phosphocreatine system. So having some carbohydrate is going to be good for strength and power sports that last, a couple hours. Or what I tend to focus on, like I said, is the endurance sports because it's way more difficult to get in calories in a running event or a biking event or like a triathlon than it is like the strength and power sports. And if you had to ask me, what a long run would be, for some of these events in a point where, because think about it, if it's anything under an hour, and I've got this on another slide coming up, you really don't need to take in carbohydrate, to be honest. It's not a big deal. You can get away with doing little, if any, but as that duration increases, you need to consider it, and probably need to start doing it from the outset. So I would say a long run is anything that's going to last more than 90 minutes, which for us, for most folks, it's, if you're doing 9 miles, 10 miles, half marathon, which is 13.1 or longer, then you're going to need to think about using some carbohydrate from the start. And even like in football games and things, you can take carbohydrate and sports drink on the sideline and be fine. Drink a cup every now and then to do that, or you can even eat snacks, and we'll talk about that too. But here's the guideline during exercise: 30 to 90 grams of carbohydrate every hour. These are what I'm getting ready to show you on this slide and the next slide are going to be important. So 30 to 90 grams is the general recommendation for carbohydrates every hour. And so bottom line is, how many calories is that? 30 to 90 grams. Somebody in the chat, type it in. Make sure you're still with me. How many calories is 90 grams? Oh, come on. You know this. Am I going to move forward? Am I just going to stop? What? 960? Vincent, what the heck? No. So 30 grams of carbohydrate. Hold up now. 30 grams of carbohydrate is how much? There you, bad math. How many calories per gram is a carbohydrate? Come on now. 4. Thank you. 4 times 30 is what? Oh, if we can't figure this out, we are in trouble. All right, yeah, 120 to about what? 4 times 90 is 280? Is that right? Yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah, and you can, we'll just say 100 to 300 calories, 350 calories, something like that. How's that sound? So there's a range. And some people will need to take less. Some people will need to take more. And these calories, these carbohydrate calories, can come in a bunch of different forms. They can come in the liquid form, they can come in the semi-solid form, and they can come in the solid form. Anybody here heard of a semi-solid? What's a semi-solid? Do we know? Anybody? It's these things, and I've got some, and I'm going to show them to you. And I'll quit sharing my screen at some point. Can y'all see this? These are gels. They're called energy gels, or sometimes they have chews that you can use. Like they've got these they call them energy chews, or there's just a bunch of different varieties and versions of things that they're not liquid, but they're not solid foods either. And you can do solid foods. It really does depend on what sport you're participating in. Okay. We'll get into that in just a second. So from this slide, you know that any sport or activity that's lasting longer than 90 minutes, hey, we need to really think about using some carbohydrate for sure, 100%. And then how much should you use? Well, about 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate for every hour. And then they can come in the form of liquids, semi-solids, or solids. This is the slide that I really want you to focus on, because this gives you the recommendation. Anything under an hour, you basically need minimal or none. You can get away with doing nothing. You know, you see these, and I always used to laugh. This reminds me, I have a nephew, and this when he was a little fella, he played. Anybody know? Maybe you did this. Played pee-wee basketball. And you know the pee-wee basketball games are like 4-minute quarters or something. Are you tracking with me? And after the game, before the game, it was so funny because he's carrying around this big jug of Gatorade. Anybody seen that? These kids, and half the time he was sitting on the bench anyway, but he's carrying this big jug of Gatorade around. And I'm thinking, you don't need that. Come on. The jug was bigger than he was, which was kind of cute. But the point is, for a pee-wee basketball game, you know, because they emulate what they see on TV, you know, and they see all the athletes drinking the Gatorade and carrying around all the time. But for a 4-minute, a quarter pee-wee basketball game, you don't need to do that. Okay. So basically up to 30 grams would be okay if you wanted to do that, but you don't even really need that. And I've got something on here too that you're seeing, you're like, what is this? Anybody ever heard of mouth rinsing? And I probably should remove this because it's not really a thing anymore. But several years ago, they did some research in these sports high intensity sports, where they had the subjects put the Gatorade in their mouth, but they never swallowed it. They basically just swished it around and spit it out. And something about having the Gatorade in their mouth sent some signals to the brain, and they actually performed better than athletes who didn't consume anything. So, which was kind of interesting. But we haven't seen any research lately on this. This has been several years ago. But bottom line is you don't need anything. And so this is also applies for a lot of folks you see when you go into the hyper center and they get on the treadmill and they run for 30 minutes. They're trying to lose weight. And then they get off the treadmill and they chug a Gatorade. Well, they just nullified their workout because a bottle of Gatorade is about 300 calories. So why would you do that? And now Gatorade and some of these other products are trying to do the concentration, like Gator Light or whatever it's called, where they're just doing half the amount of sugar. That's a little better, but the point is, if you're trying to lose weight and you run on the treadmill for 30 minutes, there's no reason that you should need any sports drink or any recovery, to be honest. Okay. So anything under an hour, nothing, or up to 30 grams. And so this is the most common recommendation. If you're going somewhere between an hour and 2 hours, then okay, you need some small to moderate amounts of carbohydrate, 30 to 60 grams an hour. So anywhere from 120 to about 240 calories an hour. And everybody's different. You got to figure out what's going to work for you, but that's the general recommendation with up to 2 hours. And then if you're going anything longer than 2 hours, then that's where you can practice and work. And because we don't talk about this much, but it is important to train your gut And you see some of these athletes that they don't practice, they're doing these runs, training runs and bikes and all this, and they don't practice what they're going to do in the race or the event. And then they get on to race day and they start having stomach cramps and things go south for them. And it's because they didn't train their gut. Just like you're training your body physically, you need to train your gut to take in the calories you're going to consume on race day. But you can get up to 110 calories 110 grams of carbohydrate per hour is as high as I've seen. And one of the reasons most of the sports drinks are doing this is that if you look at the previous recommendation of 1 to 2 hours and it says 30 to 60 grams, and you look over and it says types of carbohydrate, glucose only, what we know is your body can metabolize or oxidize about 1 gram of glucose a minute. So that's about 60 grams an hour. Okay, if you're just doing glucose. But most of these sports drinks now, what they've learned in the last decade is that there's more than one transporter for carbohydrate. There's a glucose transporter, but there's also a fructose transporter. And so what they do is they'll maximize the glucose and take in like 60 grams of glucose and then try to take in 20 grams of fructose, 30 grams of fructose, 30 grams of fructose to get up to that 90 grams an hour mark if they can. You'd like to take in as much as your body can tolerate because you want those calories, you want that energy, but not at the detriment. Because one of the things we know about fructose is it causes GI distress, and that's obviously one of the things you don't want to do, you want to avoid. And most of the blends now, they were formulated so that they've got a small amount of fructose and mainly glucose. Does that make sense? So 3 general guidelines. If you're going under an hour, minimal to 30 grams. If you're going an hour to 2 hours, you could do 30 to 60 grams, usually the most common. But if you're going over multiple hours, then you could work your way up to 90, even 100, whatever you can tolerate. Never seen too many people do more than 100, 110 grams now, because that's about 400 to 500 calories. So just be aware of that. Is that okay? Does that make sense? Type in the chat. Give me a thumbs up. Tell me if that works. Okay. So then that gets us into, before I do, this is just coming from your text, and it's showing you the same thing, giving you some sports, high intensity exercise, less than 45 minutes. I don't know what page. This is table 4.7 from your text. Sprints up to 10K, you really don't need much. But then team sports, okay, you could get away with 30 grams. That's the minimal, the very little. And then as you start running and getting sports like soccer, for instance, then yeah, you could do the 30 to 60 grams. And then you get into some of these other things, like recreational cycling. You're going out for an hour or 2 bike ride. And then as it continues to go up, Ironman length triathlons, okay, that's when you get up to the 60 to 90. And actually, now that I'm mentioning 90, that makes me think of, and I'm not going to pull it up, but I would usually do if it's a face-to-face class. I have a goddaughter who she's a dietitian, and she was having trouble with a lot of the commercial sports drinks because it has all kinds of allergens and corn and all kinds of, it has different things in it that really upset her stomach. So she started her own sports drink company, which is for my nutrition folks and even my exercise folks, if you're interested in that type of thing. Let's see, maybe I will pull it up since it might even be easier here to do it online in an online class than it is in a face-to-face class. But just to show you, she basically right now is, let's see if I can new share. Let's see if I can find this. So you should be able to see this. This is her, she called the product 90G, but now she's changed it to Flow Formulas. And so she created her own sports drink. company's doing really well. GI sensitive, formulated. Let's see what they with minimal gut stress, allergen friendly, um, free from the top 12 allergens. I don't know what all those are, um, but really neat product. So I just wanted to show you that for all you creatives in here that are interested in that type of thing. All right. Everybody see my screen again? You should be able to see my screen. All right, let's do it. So then the question becomes, how do you get this stuff in? You can go the liquid route, and that's what I typically recommend for beginners. If you're not used to eating food during your workouts and doing your training sessions, then hey, doing liquid totally works. But it can be overboard if you start doing a lot of solids. You have to be careful. Like, this is the most extreme example. Remember, we told you you shouldn't have a big high protein meal before you work out and before you exercise. Well, this is showing you the percent of meal that's in the stomach, and then time and how quickly it digests. Look at what happens when you do sports drink, which is the green bar here. Within the first 30 minutes, almost 60% of it is headed, it's out of the stomach, and your body's emptying it into the small intestine where it can be absorbed. If you eat a big hamburger, that's not the case. If you look at this 30 minutes, 100% of it's still in the stomach. At an hour, about 80% of it's still in the stomach. At an hour and a half, 50% of it's still in the stomach. Good chance that your exercise is done by the time at 2 hours, still 30% of it. So by the time you finish your exercise, you still got most of it in your stomach, which is what used to happen when back in the day, when I used to talked about last time, the old training table meals where the football coaches would take us to the Grecian steakhouse. Well, that steak's still sitting in our stomach. So liquid's the best way to go. But again, you can do semi-solids. Again, you don't have to do Gatorade. Like I said, we use, like I've got in front of me now, this is like the Walmart lemonade. And we just use scoops of it. I mean, if you look on the label, it's 100 calories and all of it's 25 grams of carbohydrate. So it's all just simple sugar. It's all the same. You could even go to your health food store, like in Conway, there's like Liz's Health Market, and you can buy what's called maltodextrin. Anybody heard of maltodextrin before? It's essentially just glucose in chains, little chains of glucose. So you can pour some maltodextrin in some water, grab you some salt and throw a little salt in there too if you want to, and mix up your own sports drink. I've even done some of that with you get some like sugar-free, like Kool-Aid packets or something, to flavor it a little, give it a little taste, and then throw in some maltodextrin and some salt, and you're good to go. So you don't have to go buy Gatorade. I even like Powerade better, but I just wanted to show you that. But that's probably the first. And then you do into some of these gels. Anybody used a gel? Like, type in the chat. Can you see this? I don't know that you can. This is what a gel looks like. Our favorite, we're out of them right now. Can you see? Can see? Yeah, haven't used. Yeah, did for a cross country event. Yeah, Gage, that's exactly right. It's going to give you a quick hit of energy because these gels, just like you're seeing on the slide too in the video or in the with the camera, these gels have 100 calories, and again, they're 25 grams of carbohydrate. They're all simple sugar. But if I were to open this, it looks, my favorite is Chocolate Outrage, and we've used them all, but it looks like cake icing and kind of tastes like cake icing. There's different brands. This is a goo packet. That's what you see on the slide in here. The one you see on the slideshow is Tri-Berry. This is one, actually, we did a race this weekend and I found this on the ground and I stopped and picked it up. Nowadays, if you've ever looked at these things, they're expensive. It's like $1.25, $1.50 for one of these. I'm like, I'm gonna stop and pick that up. So I did, and I ran. My wife did actually. I gave it to her, and she ran with it for the rest of the way in. This is not my favorite, but hey, raspberry lemonade. So I'll report back to how the raspberry lemonade tastes. But another brand is like, there's just all kinds of different brands. Here's one that's used in Ironman a lot. This is called Martine or Martin. I think it's Martine, Martine, Maurten. There are two different versions of this. There's one with caffeine and one without caffeine. This is the one without caffeine. If you look, which is a good point to make here, if you're looking at the slide, see where it says Tri-Berry? Can y'all see that? What does it say underneath the Tri-Berry? Somebody type that in. What does it say underneath the Tri-Berry? In the white part. Can you see that? I'm gonna make sure anybody see what that says? Just say, no, you can't see it. Yes, you can see it. Nobody's typing in. Yeah. 32 grams. No, oh no, up above, like right underneath the Tri-Berry. Right above, what does it say? Or can you make that out? Maybe you can't make that out. Right below the Tri-Berry in the white strip, it says with caffeine. Can you see that? That's important to know because, and my wife's sitting over here, so she's going to give me a hard time. But there was an Ironman we were doing, and we were doing it together. Every so often we'll do these together. I think the swim was canceled or something anyway, on that event. But so we were doing the run together, the marathon, and the Ironman, and it was dark. And so we took a gel, and she took a gel, but it was one of these. It had caffeine in it, and she doesn't take caffeine at all, hardly ever. And so what ended up happening is she ended up headed to the bathroom. I'm sorry, sweets. She went to the bathroom, and so I'm standing outside the porta potty because it caused some stomach upset. So you have to be careful if you're a non-caffeine user because some of these gels will have them. And the goo actually has 20 to 25 milligrams of caffeine. These Martines that I'm showing you here, this is the dark packaging, but the light packaging of the Martines actually has caffeine in it. It has like 100 milligrams of caffeine. And that's really has kind of a chemically taste, and I can't do it. And I'm a caffeineaholic. I am, right? Caffeineaholic. But I couldn't do it because it's so chemically. So that's an option. Again, you've got just a variety of different things. You've got these little, I forgot what they're called, the little chews.
Shot blocks.
Well, there's these blocks. There's
the waffle stingers.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about the little chews. Anyway, they're little bites, but they're
like gummy bears.
Think of gummy bears. How many of you guys have had gummy bears or jelly beans or sports beans? There you go. That's what I was trying to think of. Sports beans. They're like expensive jelly beans. You've got the blocks, the chews that look more like the gummy bears, except they're way more expensive, because it's a sports drink. It's a sports thing. So just know you can do those types of semi-solids. But some of my favorite things are the solids. Okay, you ready for this? That's right. When I go for my long bike rides, I eat Rice Krispie treats. I do Rice Krispie treats. And usually what I do in class is this is the show and tell part where I have the class and I would actually show you how to use one of these gels. That don't get the same effect online. I would show you all the different products. Here's one that I like recently. These are little chocolate chips, little packages of about 100-calorie chocolate chips, little mini chocolate chips. How fun is that? So we do those. What else do I have over here? Oh yeah, crackers. I mean, here's the thing. with all of this. And you can do the bars like you see Cliff bars over here. Pop Tarts, these are my favorite. Anybody like the cinnamon brown sugar Pop Tart? Don't lie. Anybody have some of them this morning? Give me a thumbs up if you like it. Give me a thumbs down if you don't. One of my favorites. And if you had Pop Tarts, then you know how many calories, like in one of these packets, you got two of the Pop Tarts, right? How many calories do you have for Pop Tart? Just for one, not the package, but just one individual. Anybody know? These bad boys are like 200 calories per tart. You know, think of it that way. So within one of these packages, you got 400 calories. And this is simple sugar. So during exercise, before, during, and after exercise is the time that you can consume all the junk that we tend to think of junk, and get away with it. You can consume the energy gels. You can consume the Rice Krispie treats. What determines what you can deal with, what your body can handle, is the how much jostling you're doing. So on the run, you know, in most of your runs, you're not going to be able to probably eat a Pop Tart, or eat a pack of crackers, unless you're, you know, running at a slower pace. Like a lot of times trail runners will do this, but in most cases, you're not going to want something that's even a solid. You're going to stick to the liquids and the semi-solids, mainly in some of these races and events. But like for running, but for biking, that's a whole separate story, because with biking, there's not nearly the amount of jostling that there is when you're running. So you can get away with, and the nice thing I like about the Rice Krispie treats, the nice thing I like about the Rice Krispie treats and the Pop Tarts is they go easy in the back of your bike jersey or your triathlon jersey or whatever it is. So you just put them in there, and you can just pull them out and just open up the pack and grab one, eat it, stick the rest of it back in your jersey pocket, or you can eat like crackers and eat a couple, take a couple out and stick a couple back in. So just know that, you know, it really does depend on what your body can tolerate, and as far as what you can do, because like in an Ironman, I don't want to be doing, and I did a talk to a triathlon club at one point, and somebody admitted that they did like 20, 30 gels. That's all they did their entire Ironman race. So you can imagine by the time you got to the end of that thing that you were sick of doing these. And so the simple solution is to just mix it up. And I'll do that, you know, for races. What I do is not only do I know exactly what I'm gonna eat before, because we talked about pre-exercise, I know what I'm going to do during. And so we get out of the swim. The race usually starts around 7:30. We're going to get out of the swim after about an hour or so, and then I'm going to get on the bike. And when I transition from the swim to the bike, then as part of that gear, I've got all my nutrition for the first half of the bike. So I shove it in my jersey, I take off, and I ride with it. And it's usually stuff like this. It's stuff that I can, and I mix that with the drink that I have in my bottles, the liquid. And so like I know the first hour, and it's just about having a plan. I usually shoot for about 300, 400 calories an hour. And that might be one Pop Tart and some sports drink the first hour. And then the second hour, it might be half of this Rice Krispie treat and, you know, water. But it comes up to where I get about 300 or 400 calories an hour. And having a plan like that is going to be important. But just know that, and that's what you see like in strength and power sports. Oftentimes you see football players eating regular food, you know, solid food on the sideline. And you also see them eating junk. I saw, I guess it wasn't this week, maybe it was 2 weeks ago. What's the quarterback for the Razorbacks? Something about him and Skittles. Like he eats, anybody see that? Like it showed him, they made a big deal about this. Like he was eating Skittles on the line. Yeah, KJ Jefferson eats Skittles. So it's just a simple sugar, right? You can do that and be okay with it health-wise in and around exercise. So I wouldn't eat a bunch of this stuff otherwise. but in and around exercise, going to be okay. And here's just a slide showing you how much carbohydrates in some of this, like a quart of Gatorade, 60 grams, a power bar, which was like one of the original energy bars, 50 grams, so 200 calories in this thing of just simple sugar. Two of these goos, and you're usually probably going to do one. So it's a 25 grams, but a banana has 30. Fig Newtons, which I've used before, and I love Fig Newtons. They pack a punch. You know, four of them's got about 40 grams of carbohydrate. And this is all going to get you in that range, right? A couple hundred calories an hour. And this is just showing you some of the foods that we consume that have carbohydrate in them. But again, this is something you might do pre. Probably should have hidden this slide now that I'm looking at it. All right, yeah, let's. All right, I did a bunch of these. Okay, some of these slides, y'all. Sorry for this. I didn't check. Yeah, okay. Should have. This is the point where I can go back and edit this. And no, there's no editing. Any questions on during exercise? Yes, no, you got it. During exercise, 30 to 90 grams. It depends, if you're going over 90 minutes, let's say. If you're going under an hour, for sure, you don't need much, if any. Okay, because that's one of the common questions. I don't know if I answer it, probably don't answer it in this chapter, but when we get to the water chapter, that's the most common question you're going to get. Do I do water or sports drink? If it's under an hour, what are you going to say? Somebody, water or sports drink? If your exercise is under an hour, what are you going to say? Yeah, just stick with water. You don't need it. Think about that. You've got enough glycogen stored in based on the foods you've eaten. You don't need to be consuming carbohydrate during that workout. For example, my wife and I are getting ready to go for seriously, after this class, we're going to load up. We're going to go for a 50-mile bike ride, which will take us about 3.5 hours. We'll probably have a bottle of Gatorade or sports drink that we'll share between us, but we'll also have a bottle of water. I might even have just a pack of crackers, but I'm not going to need a whole lot, even for a 3-hour bike ride. So just everybody okay with that? Now, as it goes longer and the intensity is less, then you could do more solid foods. Like these ultra runners, that do these 100-mile runs, they eat all kinds of stuff during there because they're out there so long. They eat Pop-Tarts and they eat potato chips. My wife loves potato chips too in these long events, just because she likes the crunchy and the salty. You never know what you're going to like when you get out there for those really long events. But ultimately, you need those calories. And because think about it, if you're running, let's say you're running 6 miles an hour and you're out there for 5 hours, that's a lot of calories. And here's the deal though, even though you're running 6 miles in an hour, that's going to be about 600 calories, 700, maybe even up to 800. You can't eat that many calories. Just know that. And so if you could do half, that would be really good. Most people can't even do that. And you typically what you see in running is you're only able to take about 100, 150. I don't see too many runners that are taking 200 calories an hour. Maybe some of these slower intensity ultra runs, but for the most part, on the bike, yeah, you can take in a lot because you're not doing all the jostling. So let's transition into post-exercise. What are you going to do after your workout's done? This is always a fun one too. Anybody notice? Who's that picture right there? Did anybody catch that? Probably didn't. Yeah, that's me. That's I think that's like Ironman Arizona. So what do you need post-exercise? Well, for post-exercise, you're not only going to need the carbohydrates, but you're also going to need the protein, right? You're going to need the carbohydrates because you want to restore your glycogen in your muscle and your liver. but you're also going to want to get in some protein because that's going to provide those amino acids to begin the repair process. Now, it doesn't mean you need to run, and that's what you have heard that, hey, I finished my big workout and I need to go run to the refrigerator to get my recovery drink. That's not necessarily the case. It is true that there is kind of a window when this enzyme that likes to reform glycogen is more active, glycogen synthase. But you don't feel like you have to just sprint to the refrigerator to get your recovery drink, or that you even need to recover from that workout. Depends on how hard it is. We'll get into that in just a second. Everybody good with that? So protein and carbohydrate. And so what we've talked about so far really leads into our next couple of assignments that you're going to do. Like this week, and I probably should have started with this weekend, right? You've got a carb case study that's due. So you're going to read that case study, you're going to answer the questions, and you're going to submit that on Sunday, whatever that date is. I think it's maybe the 8th. Maybe we'll talk more on Thursday about the case study if you want to. Take a look at it. It's in Blackboard. And then also when we get to the protein chapter, which is our next chapter, there's a carb protein assignment that digs into this as well. Okay. So what's the recommendation? Because that's the numbers, right? That's what we talked about when we first started. These next 3 chapters are all about what are the recommendations around carbohydrate. Well, we said, okay, we gave you some recommendations for pre-exercise. We talked about glycogen loading. We talked about recommendations during exercise. Now, what's the recommendation post-exercise? It's 1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. And I have here within 30 minutes, but if it was 45, it was an hour, sooner is probably better. But there's you don't have to worry about just sprinting. Like I said, it's important to focus on it if you really train hard and you need to recover. But the recommendation is 1 to 1.5 grams of carbohydrate per kg, which is not as much as you think. So if it's 1 and you weigh 70 kilograms, that's only 70 grams of carbohydrate, which is how many calories? I know I said that, and it's hard to process all that in your head. So if you got 1 gram per kg and you're 70 kilograms, how many kilograms is that? Right? How many do you need? Well, you only need 70. And how many calories is that? Somebody? Not as much as you think. Yeah. Oh, that's right. You got it right. I got it wrong. I put 240. 280. Yeah. 280 calories. That's right. And so what you would like to do, and typically, the recommendation is you would continue eating this way for the next couple hours. But the truth is, what ends up happening is you finish your big workout, you get you a little something, that has some carbohydrate, some protein, and then you just have a meal after that would be your next time when you would add in some carbohydrate and protein. You just eat a regular meal after that. Because what we know is that there's a maximum amount of protein you can consume, then your body can utilize. It's somewhere around 30 grams of protein. Here on the slide, I've got 10 to 25, depending on how big you are. But for a maximum, it would be about 30 grams per dose. Okay? And you don't need to have that protein, like I said, right immediately after. The carbs, you would like to do it as soon as you can, but you don't have to stress about it. The protein you can take later if you wanted to, and still get the same effect. So if you look, so this slide, anybody want to take a guess on who this slide is? Who's in the slide? Anybody notice? Yeah, that's my wife. That's Jamie. This is her at Ironman Arizona, I think, as well. 13:27. She's actually done under that. I think what you done under 13? Yeah, and so yeah, 12:50 or something, which is pretty good for Ironman. It's awesome, she says. And you know why she did so well? Because she's got a great coach.
True. Thank you, bro.
I was kidding, I'm picking.
No.
But she works hard. I mean, this is a pretty amazing feat. And as we get older, we appreciate that more and more because it's not as easy as it used to be. But a lot of hard work. But the point is, when I'm showing you this slide to tell you there are times, and I don't know that I have this. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. There are times when, and you can write this down because I don't know that I have it on another slide. There are times when you focus on recovery, and there are times when you don't worry about recovery. So we've just trained for this big Ironman, and we finish it. Jamie crosses the finish line. Do you think the first thing she thinks about is, oh, I need to go get the chocolate milk? I need to go get the recovery drink? No. When we finish these things, we're like, let's go to a Mexican restaurant and let's get us a margarita and get some salsa with chips. And you're not focused on recovery at that point because you're going to be done for a while. Is everybody following that? So if you've got a big event and you complete that event, like you got this big marathon or you got this event that you're training for, and you complete it, you're like, I'm done, I'm going to take some time off, then you don't have to focus on recovery. Here's when you need to focus on recovery. Write this down. Two times. Either A, you just finished a really hard workout. I'm not talking about going and running on the treadmill for 30 minutes. You don't need to recover from that. But if you have a really intense workout and you know that you're going to have another intense workout within, say, like 36 hours or so, then yes, you recover. Okay. Also, the second time you would do that is if, and this happens a lot with runners, you do a double. You wake up in the morning, you're like, you know what, I'm going to run 8 miles in the morning, I'm going to run 10 miles in the evening. Then yes, you need to focus on recovery. A lot of times, like for strength and power athletes, they'll wake up in the morning and they'll do weight training in the morning, pretty intense session in the morning, and they get on the field in the afternoon. Okay, yeah, that's the time when you need to focus on recovery. Everybody okay with that? When you look at the training schedules of say runners, there's usually like 3 big training days, right? You do the long run, they do like a tempo type run, they might even do like a track session where they reduce intervals around the track. Okay, those are intense workouts. You need to focus on recovery. But for the other days when they're just doing easy runs, don't really worry about it. Okay. And companies, sports beverages, and all these recovery drinks, the marketing is like, you got to get in and do this. But the truth is, there's only certain times when you need to. If you got another intense workout within, say, like 36 hours or so, or you're doing a double where you're doing 2 in one day, 2-a-days, then yes, you need to focus on recovery. Otherwise, don't worry about it. And this is the general recommendation: 1 to 1.5 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. Okay. And, think about it, it's not that much. So if I've got a 70-kilogram person and we just calculated that they needed 280 grams of carbohydrate, and let's say they do 25 grams of protein, that's only another 100. So that's only 380 calories. Let's say 400 calories. It's not as many calories as you think. You have a nice peanut butter and jelly, they take care of that. And again, this is a time when you can have those higher glycemic index foods. You could have a Pop-Tart if you wanted to, or you could have, some of this that's easily carbohydrates that are easily digestible and that will, be broken down, and you can get that glycogen resynthesis happening as soon as possible. Okay. And that's why chocolate milk became so popular. Anybody do chocolate milk for recovery? This is not a new thing. This has been around quite a while. I took a picture from one of the Ironmans we did years ago with chocolate milk. The sponsor of Iron Man. And everybody see that? What does it say up at the top? What kind of chocolate milk? Type it in, somebody. Yeah, low fat. So why does it say low fat chocolate milk? And by the way, we've already made this distinction. Chocolate milk's actually going to have more sugar in it than regular milk, right? They actually have more sugar in it. Yeah. So again, just with the digestion piece, that's right, Logan, with the digestion piece. So if it's low in fat, it's going to even make digestion that much easier. So they do low fat chocolate milk. I even got into the scene there for a while and was doing that and got the free t-shirt, and it's not low fat, it's just fat free, right? Same thing, same idea. Okay. Like I said, this is not a new thing. What year is this? This has been, I pulled this one. This is like one of the first articles I saw, review articles on chocolate milk way back in 2008. So yeah, this is not a new concept, but is it the new sports drink? It can be. You just don't need to pay a ton of money for these recovery drinks unless you just want to, and you don't even have to have drinks, right? You could have like this peanut butter and jelly. You've got the carbohydrate in the bread and the jelly. You got some protein in the peanut butter. So you don't have to overthink this. I think too many people overthink this and they think spending more money equals better recovery. And that's not the case. So 16 ounces of sports drink and a power bar. You could do some sports drink and a banana. You do some crackers with some skim milk. Bagel with some peanut butter works. So don't overthink this. Okay, don't overthink this. I'm showing you to end this. Researcher, one of my favorite studies, he did a study comparing sports supplement products versus McDonald's. He looked at how quickly they converted those foods, either McDonald's or these sports products, converted the glycogen and performance. And I think I have this coming up. Let's see. Yeah. So this is what they did with McDonald's. They either had hotcakes, hash browns, and orange juice, or they had Gatorade, some of these shot blocks. Those are kind of the gummies at time 0. And then 2 hours later, they did a hamburger, Coke, and fries for McDonald's, or they had some of these other recovery Cytomax and a power bar. But essentially what they did is they measured glycogen, how quickly it was synthesized post-exercise, and found that there was no difference between the McDonald's and believe it or not, the McDonald's and the sports drinks and the sports supplements. And then they even had them do a time trial afterwards and found there was no difference in the performance in the bike time trial after having McDonald's. Now, that's not to say that you should go out and eat McDonald's all the time to fuel your workouts. But what it does say is that your body's pretty smart and it's going to use what you feed it. If you feed it McDonald's, it's going to use it to the best of its ability. So which is kind of interesting. So that's really it. I'm going to stop sharing. Anyone have questions, comments? I know that was fast in doing this. Just know that you do have to have carbohydrates during exercise and post-exercise for sure. And there's a range, and know those numbers because those numbers are going to come back maybe on a quiz, maybe on a test, because you're going to need to know those numbers and know, should I select water instead of sports drink? Should I do sports drink? And, what's the recommendations there? What's the most common recommendation? 30 to 60 grams is usually kind of the go-to. And it used to be the recommendation for all distances. Now it's more for the 1 to 2 hour. And then if you're going, if you hear that, that is our smoke detector that just went off in our condo. So that's probably a good time to end it. I'm going to go take care of the smoke detector, and we'll come back on Thursday and we'll finish. We'll start protein because I think we're ready for protein next time. My wife's scrambling to. What happened?
You left some crap in the
Oh,
toaster.
it's always my fault. Okay. All right.
Turn the fan on.
Everybody good? All right. We'll see y'all next time, and we'll talk about the case study, and then we'll jump into protein. All right, y'all. Bye.